As this super debate has kicked around over the last 2 weeks, we've seen old Labor figures step into the fray, the likes of Wayne Swan and Greg Combet. Here's Wayne Swan backing in Jim Chalmers' reforms on the Today Show.
What happened with Jim Chalmers is it's typical Labor politics. He flew the kite, see which way the wind blows, realised, oh no, the kite's flying back at me, I better water this down. And that's exactly what happened.
With due respect, that's crap.
Oh, sorry. I know he used to work for you, Jim Chalmers. I know it's personal for you, Swanee.
It's not personal for me.
It's very
just
personal
not true.
for you.
And those sorts of distortions when it comes to super don't reflect well on the people that are making them.
Well, he's the one who put this wide-ranging think piece out there about sustaining our super. It meant nothing, Swanee.
Well,
nothing at all.
No, it does mean a lot.
But as Kerry Packer once said, if you're not minimising your tax, well, you need your head read, because you guys aren't spending it very well. So why should we donate more?
Well, that might be your values, but they're not mine.
And Greg Combet had his 2 cents on the front page of The Australian. Now, under the Morrison government, Josh Frydenberg and a Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg had introduced new rules requiring super funds to disclose any payments they were making to unions. Prior to these new regulations, super funds didn't have to itemise how much of members' money was being paid to unions. In one of Labor's first moves in office, they decided to wind back this new transparency. Super fund payments to unions would no longer be itemised and detailed. The Fin Review's Michael Rodden wrote at the time, and I quote, "Here we are treated to an embarrassment of Labor's priorities in which regulations not yet a year old are being torn up." He wrote, as part of Josh Frydenberg's Your Future, Your Super reforms, funds were for the first time required to provide a list of spending information for their members ahead of their AGMs. He wrote funds were due to disclose monies that went to entities connected or associated with the union-stacked trustee, and it went on. Now, this windback happened in July 2022, just 2 months after Labor won office. As Rodden said, an embarrassment of Labor's priorities to wind back rules forcing super funds to itemise their payments to unions. Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg wanted to find out what happened behind the scenes. Who had Labor met with when they were winding back these disclosure rules? He sent a Freedom of Information request asking for the correspondence between Superannuation Minister Stephen Jones and industry super funds. Well, it turns out that Stephen Jones met with lobbying outfit Industry Super Australia, where Greg Combet is chair. That meeting took place in Parliament House on the 16th of August 2022. From the documents released under FOI, we know that topics of conversation were the objective of super and a review of Your Future, Your Super, the very regulation that Josh Frydenberg had introduced. Several days after that meeting, Stephen Jones and Greg Combet went on a trip. They led a delegation of investors to Indonesia and Singapore. And a few days after that trip, on September the 2nd, 2022, Stephen Jones issued a press release confirming that non-political payments to unions would not need to be individually disclosed. There was a backlash, and ultimately the coalition worked with the crossbench and the Greens to undo this move. Today, Andrew Bragg wrote to APRA, and that's the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, to ask it to review payments super funds are making to unions. He raised in his letter a $2.5 million payment from First Super to the CFMEU. He said for a small super fund, this was a significant expenditure of members' money. And Bragg will join me on the show later this hour to talk about this, to talk about Greg Combet, Wayne Swan, and the millions flowing from super funds to the unions. But it's extraordinary that this was the priority when Labor won office, to try to remove transparency so that super funds didn't have to disclose their payments to unions. And it shows that Labor's conflicted. Is it backing the public interest, or is it furthering the interest of the super funds where their Labor mates are in senior positions.
The government's record here has been to strip transparency from super, introduce new taxes. It's not serious about the major structural issues, which is that the scheme is failing.
We think the balance is right. This is about system integrity. It's a modest change.
Will you let us know how many it scoops up in 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years?
Look, I think overwhelmingly Australians with a superannuation balance of around about $150,000 are pretty clear that this has nothing to do with them.